you're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I want to discuss about the time that kale almost killed me, the time that the vegetable kale almost took my life, and how that impacted me every day since. I find that often we have situations in our life that we don't look at and understand the reason for it. Why did that happen? Why did I go through that? And so let's go back to that night where I was sitting there eating a poke bowl. And I had the poke bowl, and I had tuna, and I had kale, and I had some brown rice in there, and some scallions, and some ginger, and that sort of thing. And I'm sitting on the balcony at my apartment, and I'm eating with chopsticks, and I'm on the phone talking to a good friend. And I'm talking to that friend, and we're laughing and talking, and I'm eating, and, we're laughing, and we're giggling about some stuff and some funny jokes, and talking about old Simpson episodes. I know that many of you can relate. Some of those Simpson episodes back when we were growing up were pretty funny. I mean, they were good. They were the ones that you kept on VHS tape, right? You kept them on as a kid, and you watched them as long as you had a VHS recorder. Some of you went on and transferred them, and you digitally transferred them. I respect that. I didn't go to that extreme, but I understand doing that. And there I am laughing and joking around, and all of a sudden, I begin to choke, because it's very thick kale, by the way. It was supposed to be sauteed, definitely not sauteed. It was thick, solid kale. And I remember I started choking, and my friend was still laughing, and I'm trying to laugh, and I'm almost gasping for air, and I couldn't even get a word out. And I remember hearing him on the phone, and I could hear, "Ashley, you there? Ashley, I can't hear you. You there?" But I couldn't answer. And I remember putting the phone down. I was like, I have to focus on not choking. I have to focus on getting this out of my throat, moving forward. I have to focus on living, and I have to focus on how am I going to do this. And in that moment, all of a sudden, time stops a bit. I don't know about you, if you've ever experienced this. Many of you probably have. You might have been panicked. But I realized that the only way to make this work is for me to slow down and figure out what I need to do. And that's exactly what I did. And so anybody, if you ever get in this situation, definitely slow down and begin to realize what needs to be done, because we have to time is of the essence in this moment. And I remember I'm trying to kind of cough it up. I'm doing everything I can. I'm trying to just slow my breathing down. I'm trying to focus. And I actually ended up, I was able to get the kale out. It was like coughing it up. I was doing whatever I could. And I finally got it up. And, just trying to throw it up, that kind of sort of thing. And I finally did. And I finally got back on the phone several minutes later. And my friend was holding onto the phone because they could hear something in the background. And they were really worried because I had recently moved. So they didn't know my address. They didn't know where I was living. They didn't know how to get in touch with somebody to help me. They didn't know how to call 911. None of that. And so that was a very interesting experience. And I remember when I finally got on the phone, it was like, oh, my God. Your throat's like, oh, my God, And they're like, oh, my God, what happened? I was like, well, I was choking. And I had that happen to me multiple times before with kale and salads and poke bowls and that sort of thing. And that was actually the last time, not that I'm against kale, it's just the last time that I've personally eaten kale, just because of the fact that I almost choked to death, because I don't want that to happen. But I realized, is it the kale, or is it being in the moment and being able to slow things down? I think that many of us take these small things for granted. And I don't really know, though, if it's small. To me, being able to breathe is not a small thing, but you see how we take it for granted. You see how we have a tendency of just assuming that's just going to happen. We're going to be able to chew, breathe, swallow, all that thing's going to happen. All of those things are going to take place, and everything's going to work out. And I realized in that moment that there's a possibility of that not. And I started realizing that I had so much going on, and I was doing so many things at one time, and so many stressors and all these things going on in my life, that I started realizing that I had to really slow down and focus. I had to slow down and focus on what I needed to focus on in that moment. And it really put things in perspective for me. And so the whole reason why I wanted to discuss the concept of how kale almost killed me is because I think it's powerful in the subject matter of what's really happening. Because I even thought about it. I thought, oh, that'd be horrible. It's like everybody goes to your funeral and they're all wearing those Kale shirts, like Kale University, Kale instead of Yale. I mean, all that stuff. Horrible. No, didn't want that to happen. Definitely not death by Kale. Don't want that to happen. Don't really want to talk about death in this moment, but wanted to make a joke about that. So think about it. What are some things that you might be, pushing to the wayside or not really thinking about or not focusing on that are important because you're dealing with a lot of stress or anxiety or drama in your life? And this is a big question because many of you out there have a lot of things on your plate. You got a lot of responsibilities. You have a lot of, there's financial responsibilities, there's work responsibilities, there's family responsibilities, there's also feelings and emotions and all these things that you're going through that you're processing on a daily basis, dealing with friends, dealing with coworkers, dealing with your feelings, dealing with marriage issues, marital issues, romance issues, the lack thereof, or having too much issues or having too little, or not being able to communicate, having communication issues with your spouse, significant other. Maybe you're in a marriage that's like a roommate situation. Maybe you're dealing with parent dynamics that you're having to take care of. Maybe you're, helping, be a caretaker for somebody and you feel like your life has been put on the back burner and you feel overwhelmed with all the work that you're having to do and everything you're having to contribute and the things that you have to get done and the responsibilities. And all these things can be weighing on you quite a bit. And, when things are weighing on you, we have a tendency of not focusing on the things that need to get done in the moment. We're not focusing on the inherently important things that have to be maintained. And so many times as you're going through stress and anxiety and responsibility issues and fear and all that kind of stuff, some of these other things that need to get done fall by the wayside. So how do we pick those pieces up? How do we begin to slow down? How do we begin to calibrate things, in a responsible way? How do we at least get some of these things done and managed that we need to do? Because I think many of you are kind of walking through this process. You have a job that you have to be at every day. So, you have responsibilities you have to take care of. You have emotions and all these things going on. And so a lot of things that you need to be doing or small things that need to be focused on or even large things that need to be taken care of are kind of being shelved. And in this situation, the ability to chew was shelved because you're processing things. And it was fun because my friend was making me laugh and it was a good thing. But, there's the stress and things that are going on in life too, that has you on the phone laughing about, a Simpsons joke. In that process, not thinking about, bodily functions that have to take place that you actually have to focus on a bit and that sort of thing. And so I'm sure that you found yourself whether you might have fallen. Recently a good friend of mine was racing to a meeting, was running late, ended up falling down, like it was crossing through like a lawn area at the office building, fell into a ditch, hurt their knee, was bloody, that sort of thing, kind of ruined their dress, that sort of thing. And I got a text message, oh my gosh, I just hurt my knee really bad, I'm bleeding. I ruined my dress and I'm late for this meeting. How could this all happen? And I texted back. I said, hey, don't panic. Try to get in there and take care of your knee. Make sure your knee's okay. Go on and message the people that you have the meeting with. Let them know you're running late. And I said, how did it happen? And her response was, I wasn't paying attention. I was just racing. I was trying to get to where I needed to go and get there as soon as I possibly could. And I was racing to get there. And that's what happened. And that's what happens a lot of times when we're racing to get places, when we're racing to do something, when we're dealing with lots of things and, whether it's an auto accident or, whether it's something else that just kind of goes by the wayside that we need to start focusing on. And a lot of times things can get, forgotten. Bills cannot get paid because, you don't think about it. It's not on the forefront of your mind. And then you're dealing with a credit issue or those types of things. And so, and those things get bigger and bigger and bigger and they become more problematic and they become more time consuming. And that's what is very, overwhelming, is that we can be already having a deficit of what we consider time. And then dealing with these other things on top of that, which can be super time consuming, creating more challenging and stresses in our lives and those types of things. So definitely want to be aware of that. Definitely want to be aware of what we can do to minimize that, because falling and hurting your knee and doing all that stuff just adds to more pain and suffering. And so how do we begin to process this? How do we begin to slow down? And I've also realized too in life, it seems that the universe gives us these lessons sometimes to slow down. And I think for the most of us, we get these lessons. They're not super, super horribly painful, but they really do change your life for a little bit. They can be life changers. I mean, in that process of the choking situation, it put into perspective the fact of how important life is. And, and I know how important life is, but it also, how fragile it can be. And how important it is to live with, thinking about these types of things, to do everything we can, to stay healthy, to stay well. And these things are very important, and being able to think about that and work on that is very powerful. And that's where I think it's very important to be at, is to see that. And so things that we're taking for granted, first off, and things that we're not really focusing on. And a lot of that is self-care. I mean, the idea of chewing your food is self-care. The idea of taking a shower and spending, a few minutes in the shower without, stressing out and freaking out about what's happening that day or what's going on is self-care. I mean, I think that some of us have gotten to the point where we consider self-care vacations and bubble baths and all that, but really self-care can be very minimal, but necessary. And sometimes we're not taking care of those things, which is just honestly eating right, taking care of ourselves, just, getting some sleep, just trying to get some sleep, trying to get some exercise, those things, and actually doing it are the bedrock of those things. I mean, that's what's so important, being able to be aware. I've had clients that have told me that, they weren't focusing, they fell, or, they had a fender bender, and the amount of time and effort that added to their life. So it's like you go from having, like, you feel like you have no time, and then all of a sudden, you stack this extra responsibility or problem on it. I had a friend of mine telling me one time about one of her good friends that was really going through a stressful time, was very depressed at the time, and it was a freak accident. But she was going to take, I think it was like a cholesterol pill and some vitamins, and she took the bottle. She wasn't thinking, and there was like I don't know how it happened. It's a fluke accident. I don't think that this person meant to do it. Now, I haven't personally talked to this person. I know the person that knows the person. But instead of swallowing the pills, the person took the little Ozarka cap, stuck it, and tried and swallowed it. And ended up in a hospital. And, they were able to get it out. But think about that. I mean, you're already stressed, you're already anxious, and now you got to go to the hospital because they have to do something like that. And that, to me, it just adds, to already the stress and strain that's already in your life. And so today's podcast is dedicated to anybody that has been under stress and strain lately, anyone that feels overwhelmed, and anyone that's just needing to kind of refocus their life and get a better focus on what really matters. And that's going to be very important here going forward, especially throughout these years. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of stress. Even if you turn on the TV for one moment, you're going to get stressed out about what's going on as well, not to mention the responsibilities and the things that you're dealing with in your day-to-day life. Your friends, your family, yourself, your marriage, your romance, whatever's going on, and being able to process all that. So today's show is dedicated to anybody dealing with stress. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to really handle this and how to overcome this, but also how to put things in focus, because we need to put it in perspective. We need to put it in focus. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm discussing how kale almost killed me. Yes, kale, the green leafy vegetable. How it almost took my life. And for many of us, we've had these experiences, whether we've almost choked to death, or we've fallen, or we've been in a fender bender, all these things that happen. Maybe not a fender bender, maybe a lot worse than that. And in the moment, we didn't have time. In the moment, we were preoccupied. In the moment, we had all this on our mind. And it's not until after the situation happens and you're dealing with the aftermath, no matter how difficult it is to clear away, no matter how fast it is to clear away, you still think about it. And you think about all the work and everything you had to go through and everything that